Dunstan here.
Gavich here.
Guzikowski here.
Seifert here.
Chandler here.
If you could all review the minutes of April 14th. And if there are no omissions, corrections, anything like that, motion please.
Seifert moves to approve the minutes of the April 24, 2018 meeting.
Chandler seconds.
Roll call.
And I.
Dunstan, aye.
Brill, aye.
Gavich, aye.
Guzikowski, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Brings us to significant common council actions. Carrie?
Council approved a resolution approving a certified survey map for West Park LLC for the property at 300 West Oakview Parkway. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Up first is item 5A, and it's review of a certified survey map for Samuel Dickman for Oakview Industrial Properties. And it reconfigures the properties at 301 and 304 West Parkview and 10861 South Howell Avenue. So, Carrie.
As the mayor mentioned, this is a proposal to redivide the 3 lots, and it's for the benefit of 10861 South Howell Avenue for water and sewer laterals. Plan commissioners may recall that during the plan review for this particular property for 10861, that there were some concerns regarding the challenges for getting service to this lot, and this is the solution. The proposed CSM, which is on your screen right now, just reconfigures a portion of the 2 lots that are north and to the west of 10861 South Howell. One of them is city-owned, and the other is owned by West Park. So there are essentially 2 entities involved until closing time for 10861. It does not change the usability or developability of Lot 2, and Outlot 1 is going to remain as Outlot 1 for stormwater infrastructure for the park. Lot 1 will then be over 16 acres in size, which is a conforming size. It will be slightly odd in shape, but this allows for the development to proceed. If the Plan Commission is satisfied with the CSM as proposed, there is a suggested motion that the Plan Commission recommends to the Common Council that the certified survey map submitted by Samuel M. Dickman, Oakview Industrial Property 3, LLC, for the properties at 301 and 401 West Oakview Parkway and 10861 South Howell Avenue, be approved with the condition that all technical corrections, including but not limited to spelling errors, minor coordinate geometry corrections, and corrections required for compliance with the municipal code and Wisconsin statutes are made prior to recording. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. We will open it up to the council or commission for questions, comments.
I don't see any
Fred?
problems. I think
Chris?
Pretty straightforward.
No.
Brian? Don? All right. I have none either. So how about a motion?
Seifert moves that the Planning Commission recommends to the Common Council that the certified survey map submitted by Samuel M. Dickman, Oakview Industrial Property 111 LLC, for the properties at 301.
Excuse me, Fred. It's Oakview Industrial Property 3.
Industrial Properties, I'm sorry.
And it's 3, not
3.
Yes.
I'm sorry. You just see 111 and if it, yeah, okay, 3 LLC for the properties at 301 and 401 West Oakview Parkway and 10,861 South Howell Avenue be approved with the conditions that all technical corrections, including but not limited to spelling errors, minor coordinate, geometric corrections, and corrections required for the compliance with the municipal code and Wisconsin statutes are made prior to recording.
Chandler seconds.
Roll call.
Hannah, aye.
Dunstan, aye.
Brillo, aye.
Kavich, aye.
Guzikowski, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Okay. Easy enough. Good luck, guys. Item 5B, plan review. Review site, building, landscape, and lighting plans by Jacob Botters, Lakeshore Veterinary Specialist for an emergency veterinary hospital on the property at 9472 South 27th Street. Carrie?
The proposal is for a 17,000 square foot emergency veterinary hospital facility. You'll recall that the conditional use for this property and for the veterinary hospital was approved by the Common Council on April 2nd of this year and previously reviewed and recommended for approval in February by the Plan Commission. It is located within the 27th Street and NO mixed-use neighborhood overlay districts, which we will discuss. On your screen right now is a general site plan for the site. You'll notice that parking is located at the north and west sides of the property, with the building on the lower center. The lot, building, and parking areas meet all dimensional requirements as proposed. Access is via the shared easement off of Ryan Road, which is shown to the east. Future approvals from WSDOT will be needed for access to 27th Street. Now, staff has had many conversations and has confirmed that WSDOT is allowing for the use of that existing easement and access off Ryan Road for this property. And should there be any future connections to 27th Street, they will need to review and approve that. And that will be for multiple properties. It was part of an overall access plan for this area. And that was done back in the early 2000s. Parking, again, was reviewed during the conditional use review. However, there have been some changes since that initial concept plan. Future parking shown on that concept plan is now shown to be constructed with the building. In essence, that's increasing the number of proposed parking stalls to be constructed at once. The configuration of the access drive and parking areas have slightly changed. The parking area to the east has been removed. It's shown as a future expansion area for the building as well as stormwater infrastructure. Those are not really changes from the original concept. It's just that there is no more parking shown on the east side. The previous plan had parking for 89 vehicles. That's in excess of 5 stalls per code based on 12 doctors and 48 staff. Now, since then, there's been additional information provided that there would be 17 doctors and 48 staff. So therefore, they are proposing 115 parking stalls initially. That's in excess of 16 based on the staffing needs. Because this is intended to be a training facility per information received by the client's consultant, up to 60 staff could be on site at this location because it would be training for other lakeshore facilities. That would still be in excess of 5 per code, assuming that there would be 60 employees on site. Staff has expressed concerns in the past with the excess parking proposed. There would be 50 excess if all staff were on site at one time, which means that 50 would be available for emergency patients, for any kind of deliveries, and that would be at all times. It's unlikely that all of those 50 stalls would be used regularly or that they would be needed at any one time. Although it is an emergency facility and we do recognize that the staff would be fluctuating based on hospital needs, it does seem to be unlikely that there would need to be 50 excess stalls. There is a recommendation in the report or a suggestion in the report that there be future parking designated and not all the stalls be constructed at this time, but that's for Plan Commissioner consideration whether or not that would be a requirement, or if the Plan Commission is satisfied with the information provided in the narratives that are before you regarding the construction of 115 parking stalls now. On the screen now is the landscaping plan. It's actually quite extensive, showing interior and perimeter landscaping. There's also landscaping proposed around the pond and around the building. Some of it will be used to screen the parking from 27th Street. There's no real parking that would be seen from Ryan Road directly, but there are landscape drifts along the corner and along the west. Again, there's a little bit of screening for the property to the north and for the dumpster, which is located on the east. So that entire east side will have some vegetative buffer to the eastern properties. There are a couple of landscape plan requirements that need to be included when these plans are submitted for building permit applications. The plans must include the heights of the plants at installation and maturity, not just one or the other. Screening must be installed and maintained at a minimum of 3 feet for those parking stalls that are going to be along rights of way, which would be on 27th Street. And there is, again, landscaping surrounding the trash enclosure, which is to be a 22 by 19, roughly 23 by 19 brick veneer enclosure that will match the building with painted cedar plank gates on the west side. As with any recommendation that staff has made in the past, we still recommend that the wood planks be replaced with something a little bit stronger like composite, because we have seen instances where those wood gates do get broken very easily. Moving on to the building. Each of the elevations has the similar materials, but they're a little bit different in terms of how they're treated. So the east elevation would be facing the development to the east, so the pick and save area. But on all elevations, there's a combination of brick veneer in 3 patterns and 2 colors, pre-finished ACM metal panel wall system in white, so everything that's on the screen right now would be white. Light gray tinted storefront systems would also be included for the windows and for the doors, mostly on the west side. There is some spandrel, none on the east elevation, but we will get to that. What's highlighted on the screen in red is the location of one of several fences that they're proposing. Again, if plan commissioners recall from the conditional use permit review, there are pet relief areas and there are some areas that will have access to the outside. This is one area that will propose to have a fence. It's actually near the ICU portion of the hospital. What is in that kind of brown color, I've highlighted to be the pre-finished longboard aluminum siding system. This is something that I want the plan commissioners to pay attention to, because in the overlay district there are specific requirements for building materials that are acceptable. And this is one of the building materials that would be an exception to that requirement. Again, with the white panel, this is another metal component. These are accent pieces, but overall the total metal components of the building would be more than what is allowed in terms of accent, which is 25%. Moving on to the north elevation, we see more windows, and what is in blue are proposed to be spandrel windows. Now again, per the overlay district, these are not allowed to be dark gray tinted, so the color of those proposed spandrel windows do need to be specified on the plans. What is highlighted in brown, again, are those accent metal pieces. What is in white are the main metal pieces, the metal panel system. And then in gray are the brick components. And then if you look at the very west side of this elevation, which is actually the northeast corner, it's just highlighting where that fencing is sticking out from the building on the east elevation. The west elevation is where the main entry will be, and this is where the parking lot is situated as well. You'll see a main entry facade. It's kind of mimicking a 1.5 or a 2-story building, even though it doesn't function that way and it's only a single-story building. But this does draw everybody to that west element for an entry. It's very visible. It's very easy for people to understand this is where they need to enter. This has a curtain wall system for the glass, which again is another thing that is not allowed by the overlay district, so it would be an exception that the plan commissioners would have to consider. Along with the metal components, this does have the ACM panels, and the archway is again metal, and there's a standing seam metal roof, but the metal roof component is not necessarily part of the exceptions that need to be considered, but overall the metal components do. The brown are the accent metal panels that are the horizontal siding that we talked about on the other elevations. And again, the blue are highlighting those proposed spandrel windows. What's outlined in red are the decorative fencing portions of the building for the pet relief areas, or at least just access to the exterior that's a little bit fenced in and allows a little bit of privacy for those doors. Then finally, the south elevation, same building materials. There's no fencing proposed, but you will see that eastern fence on the south elevation just a little bit. Again, the brown metal accents, and then what's in blue on the screen is one overhead door. Typically, overhead doors are not allowed to face any kind of right-of-way, but this is just an overhead door on one side that's all glass. So it's similar to what we saw for the car dealership, except this will also have extensive landscaping in 2 areas along Ryan Road, so it really won't be seen. But if it is kind of glimpsed, it'll read as a window. Rooftop mechanicals are also not mentioned, but proposed to be screened by the rooftop elements, and anything that is not screened via vegetation or rooftop will have to be either screened by extensive landscaping, some fencing, or any kind of screening that would have to be installed and approved by either the Plan Commission or the Community Development Department. We didn't talk about it, but there are also proposed metal canopies over some of the windows on all but the north elevation, so that adds a little bit of a decorative component to these elevations. The fences that we discussed will be about 6 feet tall. And they do have frosted panels. I'm not entirely certain how those get integrated, but that was what was mentioned in the narrative. What's on the screen are a series of renderings for the proposed building. So this is the entry perspective on the west and the northwest corner. Southwest building perspective. Northeast building. Southeast, and this is the overall overhead perspective. Per code, metal panels are not listed as acceptable primary exterior building materials and can be only used as accents. That's also mentioned in the overlay district section, so I'm not going to read that. There is an allowance in the code that the Plan Commission can modify those building standards and allow the use of the metal panel system and the metal panel accents if there's a 3/4 majority approval, and also if supplemental design elements or improvements are incorporated into the project over and above those which would otherwise be required, which compensate for the modification of the particular standard. What you have in front of you and what was emailed is a narrative request for those modifications and the justifications therefore. If the Plan Commission is satisfied with those modification requests and feels that there are supplemental design elements that have been incorporated into these plans that justify those modifications, there is a suggested motion provided that the Plan Commission approves the site and building plan submitted by Dr. Jacob Otters of Lakeshore Veterinary Specialists for the property at 9472 South 27th Street, subject to conditions 1 through 7. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Before we open it up to questions, comments from the commission, would the applicant like to get up to the podium and say a few words? Not a requirement, but if you'd like to.
Hi, good evening. Jordan O'Connor, architect with Design to Construct Development Corporation. Address N173 W21010 Northwest Passage, Jackson, Wisconsin 53037. So Carrie did a pretty good job of summarizing the project for us. A couple things I'd just like to just clarify or kind of elaborate on before questions as well are one of the colors of the proposed ACM, kind of the accent band along the top and some of the sides. Carrie mentioned white, and it's, the rendering didn't do a fair representation of it. It's slightly off-white. I have a sample here. It's kind of a more taupe color that accents the faux wood as well as the brick colors that have been picked out. Additionally, in regards to the ACM being proposed, we acknowledge that, it's part of the 27th Street overlay. It's not one of the listed materials and based on, the amount that we're proposing. However, I've got a couple of details here that might be relevant to some of you if you're interested in seeing the actual constructability of the panels. They're very, very durable, heavy duty. They're maintenance free, color stable, some things like that I've got a little chart here along with the wood siding look. It just kind of gives a little bit of a diagrammatic look if that's of concern to anyone, that it'll help elaborate a little bit on kind of how that comes together if that was of concern. Beyond that, happy to answer any questions that anyone have. Dr. Jacob Otters is here as well if there's specific questions about the practice or if there's questions about the parking concerns that were raised. And we thank you for your consideration.
Okay, thank you, Jordan. This time we'll open it up. Comments?
I actually have a question/comment. My first question is, there is no fence around the entire site, right? Just around the building, certain area like Carrie just showed us?
Correct. Yeah, there's one small portion on the east side of the building. As Carrie mentioned, it would be for pet relief areas. So animals in ICU or isolation that just need to go out and use the bathroom or stretch their legs, they'd be taken out on a leash with a nurse and then brought back into the building. And then on the front side, near the main entrance, there's a couple of comfort gardens kind of on both sides of the main entry that want to be somewhat private from, kind of people entering and coming and going from the building. Primarily, they'll be used for just outside the comfort room where if a family were to have to put a loved pet, down to sleep, they wouldn't have to exit through the main waiting area. They would just kind of exit into the comfort garden, as we're calling them, and it's a little more private area where they can take their time.
So there is no concern, especially with an animal hospital being close to 27th Street, a pet run away or exit or anything like that running into the street?
No, there doesn't seem to be much concern at least on the part of the doctors who are pretty familiar. And as a matter of fact, they happen to be in the Pick and Save development right now. Their current location is, so they haven't experienced problems like that.
And I agree with Carrie. The parking is a little bit extensive for the amount, and knowing the number of staff that you have there, I would agree that it would be a good idea to develop those at a later time, not right away.
Okay.
That's it for me.
As long as we're on the parking issue, on the northwest corner, everybody would like to see that road extended through to 27th Street. There are some hurdles that we need to jump through, if they are even possible to get that to happen. Would it be an option, since we have excess parking, to create that road as it was going through currently? So to me, it looks like you'd be losing like 11 spaces on that side. That could be landscaped out at this time, and then you're just taking out some landscaping or doing something different with the curbs to make that connection in the future if that option arises.
Sure, definitely. And quite honestly, everybody on our side of the project would love that access as well. Right now, with some of the adjacent properties, negotiations are ongoing with trying to make that work, working with the DOT and, like I said, some of the adjacent property owners, the bar to the north and the developer to the east. That's all kind of in flux right now, and if that is something that can be attainable as part of the development, it's something that we're 100% going to explore.
As far as changing the parking, would that be an option?
It would. Well, essentially,
get to that driveway, can we change the parking so it's set up so that if that happens in the future, it's an easy switch?
Yeah, and actually, that was kind of part of the conceptual plan there. The curved portion of the drive would essentially continue. The ideal point would be kind of where that existing curb cut is kind of shown to terminate there, and then like you acknowledge, those parking spaces would just no longer be used, and the cut would be through there, and the parking would be essentially gone. But I think what you're getting at is, to kind of show that conceptually up front, so that in the future, if that does happen, then there no work needs to be done. Is that correct?
I'd go a step further and not put those parking stalls in at this point.
Not even, yeah.
That site plan would change to show that future road going through there.
Understood.
It's just not making that connection to 27th Street at this time.
Got it. Understood.
And then that just would be landscaped at this time with something. I know in talks too, there is discussions about a fence going on that corner. Is that something that's still out there, or is that?
I think the fence you're referring to on that corner would mainly be either construction fence or erosion control fence that would just kind of help establish the property line and, help kind of visualize, kind of where the property is and where those drives are for everybody's benefit.
We were talking about like a wood fence going up there or some sort of decorative fence along that property line.
I don't believe if that's being considered at this time anymore.
Okay, thanks.
Excuse me, Brian, where we're north side of the fence property line, or?
Basically along the bar property on that northwest corner, so the north-south line and then west out to 27th Street.
Was that requested by?
It's just something that came up in discussions.
Okay.
And working with them, trying to get this deal done and everything else as an option.
One quick question. You have an overhead door. What would that be used for?
Primarily, deliveries will use that door on occasion. Smaller things like medical gases, things like that, will probably be able to use the man door next to it. But some of the equipment that they have, various X-ray machines, things like that, it's something that we would plan for the future. To kind of have easy access to deliveries that isn't going through main patient areas, kind of back of house more or less. That basically right behind that door, based on the floor plan, is kind of like the main storage area where medical gases are stored, things like that. And, we kind of wanted to, address two needs, but make it decorative and, attractive at the same time.
Definitely is it.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. Well, I just have a few questions. I too echo the parking, some of the parking sentiments here. If it's developed a little more, I can understand it by adding, but right now I'm kind of on the fence here. I do represent this district. I have received some favorable reviews from many people. I too think that this is just a great asset to the community. I mean, what a great looking building for that corner. So thank you for stepping up and coming full circle with this. Regarding Carrie, maybe the ACM, and how do you mitigate, or how do we minimize, how do we try to get closer to whatever we need to be to get to the 27th Street? Or, I mean, because I don't want to really lose what we've got here, because this is a really nice looking building.
So full disclosure, I have actually utilized Lakeshore's services before, so just putting that out there. As far as making a modification determination and whether or not what's being proposed has elements that would go above and beyond what would otherwise be required, that's something that the Plan Commission actually has to consider based on what's before you. Yes, there are metal panels that are used that are not in conformance strictly with what the municipal code requires or allows. Basically, anything in excess of 25%. Anything that's more than an accent, that's something that would be a consideration. Does the Plan Commission feel that what is being proposed for the landscaping, for example, is over and above what would otherwise be required in the code? I would argue that there are actually a couple of places in the landscaping plan that do go above and beyond what's required in code. The landscaping that's proposed on the north side, though it doesn't look like it, it actually has quite tall junipers that are proposed there for screening. Installation that's 6 feet tall. We only require 3 feet tall screening for parking stalls along the street. Typically, there's more sparse landscaping on the perimeter. It's a 5 foot wide strip, so I would say that the extra landscaping that they've proposed here might be something that the Plan Commission could be considerate of in terms of providing that modification justification. If you're looking at the building itself, you could require that there would be some slight modifications that would increase the brick that's proposed. Again, that's up to the Plan Commission for consideration. You do have to look at the brick and the glass that's being proposed, and those individual elevation percentage breakdowns have been provided in the plans for you to consider. There's also a building addition that's proposed at some time in the future. So that would be something, while you can't really consider it for this modification request, you could, that's something that does need to be considered in the future about what is that addition going to look like too. So, and there's no, I've noticed in the plans that there's no provision for a monument sign. If a monument sign is going to be proposed, which they have the ability to request, are there going to be specific requirements from the Plan Commission for that monument sign? Specific look, specific landscaping around that area, a location specifically that would address some kind of, like we talked about with the car dealership, a gateway feel. Are there little individual site elements that the Plan Commission would like to see added? Do you want to see a bike rack? Kind of an argument against it would be this is an emergency kind of facility. The only people that might use the bike rack would be possibly the doctors or the staff. If they're close enough, they could see some benefit in having a bike rack there. Perhaps benches outside that could be utilized for patients. These are some of the areas that the Plan Commission could consider requesting or requiring to make up for the use of metal panel.
Well, and I just going back to that was my last topic was landscaping. I do feel that the landscaping is, above what's required here, so it really does look nice. So.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning the landscaping because, like as Carrie said, that was a focus of ours, especially acknowledging the parking, kind of along the corner where we know it's not necessarily the desired arrangement. So that is where some of the landscaping focus kind of came in, why we chose to do that to kind of help offset the fact that we're doing some of those things. So thank you for acknowledging that.
Brad?
Yeah, I just have a question going back to Brian's comment about the access to 27th Street. If that is made, will we still be able to meet the parking stall requirements that we've talked about? The 99, I think, is a maximum that we said you have to meet, or at least.
What's shown in the plans
Right.
is 115.
Right.
So the minimum required per code, and I would argue that the minimum required per code could be actually more than what would be required for such a use, is going to be exceeded. If we require the 99, you could say that there would be enough. Now, whether or not the hospital facility feels the same way is another story. But there is enough room, as Brian was mentioning, there would be a reduction of about 11 stalls. So there would still be in excess of what would be required by code.
So we're talking, roughly be 100 stalls, roughly.
Even a couple more, yeah.
A little more, 103.
Thank you. No, I was just a little concerned about that. If you do get an access and you have to give up some parking stalls to get that access to 27th Street.
You worried about it coming down too far, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if you'd come down a little too far that you may interfere with a couple more, but in general, we still could meet it. The minimum requirement, let's say, of 99.
Yes, that could be met.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Elsie?
I do have a couple questions about the materials.
Okay.
So let me start with Carrie. From what I interpreted, there are two materials that are compliant?
The brick and the glass.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Can you show us what areas are compliant and then which ones are not? So is that the brown part?
Everything that's in gray
Oh, in gray.
and all of the windows. That's all compliant. Everything that's white, or in this case brown, those are the metal panels. Okay, so this is the east elevation. The north elevation, we have a couple of considerations. You've got spandrel, the windows, and then again, what's white or brown, those are the metal panels.
Can you provide a little more information on why you have decided to select those two materials which are considered not compliant for our standard?
Sure, absolutely. So the general intent of kind of the whole palette, the whole kind of color scheme and design is based off of one of Lakeshore Vet's other locations, kind of staying in tune with the branding, kind of keeping a familiar building look, but at the same time, acknowledging, the fact that this is potentially going to be a showpiece on a major corner, kind of modernize some things, add a couple pops, things like that. So the first one I'll talk about is kind of the faux wood look, which is actually an aluminum siding that, based on the percentages, it doesn't necessarily categorize as an accent, but this is the actual sample of the proposed wood siding. I also, in addition with the ACM, I have a diagram here for reference that kind of shows how it's installed. There's a substantial clip system, that applies to the cladding, so it's very durable, very heavy duty. It doesn't require the maintenance of your typical, like a wood siding, or it's more durable even than your typical residential grade aluminum or vinyl, things like that. So it's a very attractive, kind of accent material that complements, the brick colors, things like that. Going back to the ACM, the reason that was chosen, again, was kind of to, I guess more or less to keep the facades interesting to the point where, doing excess brick and changing the patterns is certainly an option that we explored, but this is just to kind of, in our opinion, give a little more visual interest to the facades, kind of have the accent color that, kind of frames some of the facades, and again, kind of, essentially it acts as a rain screen, so it's durable, it's water resistive, it's more color stable than other similar design features like stucco or an ephes that I know is certainly not necessarily a desired material, but hopefully that kind of answers your question as to how we kind of derived getting to those materials.
And what about the spandrel windows?
Well, the spandrel glazing, where we have that located, with the exception of kind of the main front entry, where we have the windows that go all the way down to the ground, those happen to be at areas such as like surgery rooms, treatment areas, and even just typical exam rooms where if a dog or something were to be in that area, the distractions for the dogs to see outside sometimes are counterproductive to the procedures and things that are going on. So that is certainly why we kind of have some spandrel there at the front, the main facade area. Same thing kind of on the bottom, and then the kind of the band that you see in the middle there highlighted in blue would more or less be kind of for structural purposes. There'd be a structural element there to support the wall, so just so you wouldn't see that from the outside. That would be a way to keep the glass look, but conceal some of the structure behind.
Thank you.
Sure.
Anyone else? Before I go, Mike, do you have anything from fire perspective on entrance, given your equipment that you have to get in and what we have for entrance here that we're working on through Weather Pick and Save 27th?
Mike Kresick, Fire Department. So the access to this site, now once you get in the site, you've got your standard access roads and NFPA standards for the WIS. So it's laid out well, and actually the parking works to our advantage. It gives us a little bit of maneuverability in there. Now obviously the 27th Street access point would be nice, but that appears to be just a right out going north onto 27th Street. So our access to this facility is predominantly going to be through Ryan Road and into the entrance, if we ever have to respond there. So although that 27th Street access point would be nice, with that access at Ryan Road, that does work into our response program.
Okay. Makes sense. And Pick and Save one you can deal with either way if they ever get it. If they ever get permission to easement it.
Absolutely, correct.
Okay. While you're up here, any comments regarding building material from fire safety standard?
Not specifically for the exterior materials. Our next step will really be to evaluate the interior of the structure and the fire protection features inside the structure, which really is outside maybe the scope of what the Plan Commission would look at. But certainly from the exterior, no additional comments on that.
Is this corner adequately served for hydrants and what have you?
And that's one area Jordan and I will meet to discuss. We're working on another project right now with hydrant coverage. What we'll do is basically calculate fire flows for that structure, determine based on square footage, occupancy type, maybe the number of floors, if it's above one, if there are needs for sprinkler systems, and then the current hydrant layout for that corner. Once we've got that developed, we'll determine the need for additional hydrants, maybe to support that fire flow. So those will be worked out as we have more details on the square footage and the interior of the structure.
Okay. I think that's all I got for you. Yes.
Hi, I'm Jacob Otters from Lakeshore Veterinary Specialist. I just wanted to talk a little bit on the parking, just because it's kind of a tough spot for us in our other location. We recently did an expansion in another location. We have 80 parking spots at our other facility. In general, we have 12 doctors on site, or I should say 11 doctors on site, about 25 technicians and 13 administrative employees, so about 49 employees, okay, and we have 80 parking spots. And we are constantly in conflict with the city because there is no street parking. But several times, probably at least once a week and definitely a few times a month, we are parking on the street. And we're trying to come up with a solution, but it's not going really well. And we had built a large conference room at that site for continuing education. We do a quarterly continuing education for referring veterinarians in the community to help train them on advanced procedures and things. And generally 40 to 60 people come to those. Well, we built a conference room for that, but we have never been able to have a single one because there's absolutely no place for them to park. Last year we hired 36 employees. This year we intend to hire at least that many. So we're growing very rapidly. And while it seems excessive right now, when we think about all team meetings, when we have the whole team come together, we have a monthly staff meeting. When we think about training potential to bring referring veterinarians into this facility or other employees from other locations for training, I get very nervous if we cut the parking down too much because right now it's a bad situation in our other location. And while I am certain, there'll be a lot of times where a lot of those spots are open. However, there will be times each month where most of those spots are filled. And so I just want to make sure that we're aware of that and that we consider that when making our limitations on parking. I know that most places, even with the current site we have in Glendale, they said, boy, you have more than enough parking spots according to code. You even have maybe more than we'd say you have to. And we said, well, we know we're going to need more. And sure enough, less than a year later, we're out of space. So that's all I comment on. The other thing I know is, as far as this aluminum product, we're certainly not saying it has to be this. And if you were to say, well, you need more brick and less of this, our current location has two color bricks. Sort of the area that's recessed with these panels in our other facility is a different accent brick. And then we have the steel roofs, which we'd be carrying here with the kind of barreled roofs. So there's flexibility there if the group doesn't feel that we should use this product. We'd still like to use those flat panels. Our current location in Glendale, which we're trying to mimic so people that have gone to one kind of recognize the other, that facility has EIFS on it. And we knew right away it's a tan EIFS, kind of redder brick or medium red brick, and then a darker brick. We knew that EIFS wasn't acceptable, so we were trying to get that sort of same feel with an acceptable product.
Great, thank you. Go ahead, Chris.
So some more themes I heard here are branding is what they're trying to carry over to this location, and that certainly is something that's understandable from our perspective, I would think. Parking, what would be the minimum parking that would work to get you through to, for minimal, and then what's that magic number? Is it 85? Is it 105, 120? I mean, I'm just asking what would be the ideal number.
Well, code says 99. So if
99.
anything is in need over 99, that's something that they would have to, that the applicant would have to provide to the Plan Commission as to what would be the absolute minimum to fulfill their needs.
My thought is definitely in excess of 100. I mean, I think, as we said, I have 80 in my current spot, and we can't even consider any kind of conferences because the employees filled a lot and then some. And that leaves the rest for employees, and my office overlooks the clients. My office overlooks a client lot, and I constantly see that full, especially in the days when we have some services that receive a lot of appointments, like dermatology, very high volume. They're seeing sometimes 3 cases at once, one doctor. And we are this year in Oak Creek adding 6 new services, and several of those are very high volume, so we only anticipate the volume to go up significantly. So, you know, I think on there we had, 115? Yeah. Certainly I would never want to see less than 105 on there if we can do that. And the problem that I run into too, and maybe it's insignificant, it's a sort of my own best interest, is to stop 10 parking spots short and then in 2 years say, okay, let's mobilize a crew to come excavate, disrupt everybody, drive on our nicely made pavement, and put in 10 more parking spots is not great economically for me, nor is it great for disruption of our employee lot, everything else. So I want to consider that too. When we built our Glendale expansion, we had to bus people basically with shuttles because we couldn't park in the lots when they were building them. And that was not easy 24/7. It just doesn't work great.
What is the comparison in terms of size of your Glendale facility versus this proposal?
Yeah, so the Glendale facility is a little bit larger square footage, but the actual clinical space is the same. Actually, it's a little smaller. This facility will have 15 exam rooms, of which 2 are comfort rooms, but double as exam rooms. Glendale has 12 exam rooms and 1 comfort room. We also have some other procedure rooms here for ophthalmology, cardiology that can be used also double as exam rooms when the demand requires, which we don't have in Glendale.
And this facility will also have the training center that you have?
Yeah, and so what we'll likely do is transition a lot of those training sessions and things here because the parking will allow for it. Yeah.
Okay, anybody else before I kind of run with it for a little bit? Okay. First of all, I think it's a great looking building, and I applaud you for a great business model. You really educated me. We probably have as many dogs as we have voters in this town. Just walked around it. So there's a big need here. Let's kind of stick to the parking first and Brian's idea about possibly just having that officially drawn entrance in. What would it be if we officially drew it in, allowed you to have the spots now? And I mean, you just made the point about ripping it up, but Brian, I mean, I guess I'm going to defer to you on this. To rip that up, to me, wouldn't it just be the area from those handful of spaces west to the road? And then the road would continue through on what's shown there as the curved road?
You'd end up tearing out all those spaces as well.
The ones on the north?
On the north side. You'd rip all those out, and the curbing basically back to the driveway to the east there. Assuming you'd match in at some point there to bring your curb line through out to 27th Street. And then you'd tear out the corner of that parking, probably lose 3 or 4 spaces there, and build your driveway coming in there.
Okay. If you scroll down on that, Carrie, go all the way to the south end of the building. They kind of do this little bump out here on the far south side of the lot. On the very bottom.
Where the glass overhead doors are?
Yeah, I guess so.
Parking there?
Why can't that bump out continue out straight and you pick up a couple of spots going that way. Is that possible? And also to park sideways along the bump out, pick up 3 or 4 spots there. Is that feasible?
They're probably using that for the turning movements for the trucks to back into that loading dock.
Okay. There's that deal. Sorry about that. I really think it would aid you to have that entrance off 27th at some point in time, for sure. At some point in time, I don't know, the establishment to the north, if they're going to improve the site, stay as is, or it ever turns into anything else, if there would be a shared agreement for access that way, because I can't imagine them having 2 access points within, is that 50 feet?
No, DOT has already said that there would be one consolidated access point on 27th Street, be it the existing one for the bar to the north or the kind of reserved area that's for this particular property. But it would be consolidated to one.
Okay. So with a crystal ball, it looks like it would come through the vet property and not the bar property. Am I correct in that assumption? So given that shared, could there be a future easement for parking? Well, we don't know that because we don't know what's going to happen to the north.
We can't base an approval for today based on what may or may not happen tomorrow.
Happen. Okay. So we got a judgment call on that one, whether we take those 11 spots from them or we leave them as is and then we deal with it at a future time. I'd rather be proactive with it, to tell you the truth. I'd like to accommodate you guys, but I would rather be proactive. I would like to allow you guys to park in them now as is, if we could work something out and see how your business model comes about, because it could be years before you get that access point. Am I correct in that assumption? No, I hope not either, but we don't have any say-so which way the state goes. So, yeah, Christina.
Being working for the state, it can take a very long time. So, that being said, I was just talking to Brian here. From constructability and cost-wise, the doctor made a good point, because they're going to be the prime is going to be out there already constructing. It's cost-effective from business-wise to install those stalls for now, and when the access come in, it's cheaper to remove. So removal is always cheaper than adding and building. So from my perspective, it would be, from my opinion, to have those stalls as indicated in the plans.
Okay, but we would have to have a condition to have that.
Correct.
That official road.
Correct.
On the plans.
It's not an official road, it's just an access point.
An access point.
Access.
Thank you for the correction. But we'd have to have that in the conditions, correct?
No.
We wouldn't have to?
No.
Okay.
And we have, though. Can we add it? If the access has been granted by WSDOT to remove those stalls, and so we don't have to come back here and argue for it.
It wouldn't be necessary to have it in the conditions.
Can we add it, just in case if we want to come back and do it?
It would be a grant of an access point by an entity that we have no jurisdiction over anyway. So if anybody wanted to have an access to this lot, regardless of whether or not there would be anything built on it, they could still go forward. They could still build a driveway without having to come before the Plan Commission anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
it would be redundant is what I'm saying.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
Who continues the petition for this, Carrie? Just kind of educate me. The access point, or does the
The
state
access-
just come along and say, you're going to put it in?
Well, this was something that's been ongoing in terms of discussion since the early 2000s, and I think that was even gone back to 2004, 5, something around there.
You're right. The state does move slow.
Yes, it does.
Well, the record shows that when the Pick and Save development was going in, this was considered as well. So there are letters going back to 2004 and 2005 discussing multiple property access points through this property to get to 27th Street. So not only would we be talking about veterinary hospital traffic going to 27th Street from this property, also Pick and Save and that development going through here to get to 27th Street as well. Now, there is also another potential access point off this property to the north that Pick and Save could potentially access 27th Street too. But again, that's not for this consideration. So as far as access has been determined, the state already kind of has a plan in place. It's just a matter of getting all of the landowners on board and getting those access points in the ground, so to speak, or paved.
Okay. I guess rather than guess, we just go on what's in front of us. At least that's my opinion. Secondly, question for you guys. This kind of leads into my whole discussion of the glass panels and everything else. Is this a LEED certified building?
We are, as soon as we're done with the mechanicals and things, we are going through energy analysis, and because this is an SBA built building, so we are going to have to generate 10% of our own power. So it's going to be, I'm not going to say it's truly LEED, but it is going to be built as energy efficiently as possible.
Okay. Because given the amount of glass and what have you, usually the lighting's dim on it, and they dim half the lights, or they darken half the lights in it because of the sunlight, what have you. Which is a justification, for what I think is an overshoot on the glass. Now, where I'm really going with this is the metal panels. I like the look of the building myself. I really do. I know it ain't exactly up to par with what 27th Street escape plan is. But I'm looking at this building, and I'm thinking about buildings that were either approved or exist on 27th Street now on both sides of the street. And I would argue this is probably one of the better looking buildings between Ryan Road and College Avenue. Yep. Without a doubt. And the last building I know that was constructed on 27th Street happened to be in front of Hobby Lobby on the Franklin side. And that's basically a block strip mall. I don't think there's any comparison what's going on in this building. So we just did the car lot. The car lot had metal panels. There was another one. We had to make that determination. And again, if we found it suitable for the site, I actually am in favor of allowing the metal panels to go in as is, because I looked at the brickwork and I kept going, well, where does it look out of proportion? And if we ran the brick up, I actually, like on the corner, it would be the southwest corner where it goes from west to south. And I thought, okay, run the brick up all the way. Actually, I think it would break up the building, and I am no architect, let me tell you. See how they have that little column there? Or even if you took the middle section by the windows all the way up, I think you have a better looking building here.
Yes.
Without a doubt.
Mayor, the only reason I was looking for some type of workaround was because I really don't want to see this change at all. I mean, if we can get it as is, that's great. I mean, because I too think this is
proportionally, yeah, it looks good. The lobby, I mean, little extensive there because I even thought, oh, maybe we put brick columns going up, but for the most part, I like the look of it. I can't come up with any better reason than it fits.
Yes.
And again, does it fit perfectly on paper? Probably not. But to the average citizen that's going by, they're going to like the look of this building. If we have any taste, so to speak, it's a good looking building. So I for one, am okay. The other thing, when we did do that 27th Street escape plan, that has to be going on somewhere about 10 years, maybe, Pete, somewhere in there. These panels weren't readily used at the time. Building materials have taken a shift and change. So the building looks in the last 10 years have really changed with the materials that are out there, and we've seen it with the cedar, the hardy board cement siding and all that stuff. So from my perspective, at least for what it's worth, I'm okay with the siding. And again, the last building we okayed on 27th Street had probably a little over on metal paneling. This one, I think, actually probably has more glass than the car dealership had. Of course, different building, but give or take.
And we don't have the square footage breakdowns.
No, but if you go percentage-wise, again, I ain't knocking the car dealership, but be a dynamite-looking car dealership too. You know, it's a very handsome building. So, I think that's all I really have. I'm very surprised about the parking. I didn't think it would turn into that big a deal. But if your need is there, I would say we put it in the way it is, and then we cross that bridge when we come to it, because it may not happen for quite a while. And where it goes with Pick and Save, who knows what the future of that building holds once you guys vacate as a renter and come into this building. So could be quite a different look there, and the need may be greater for them to partner and want to do it too, depending on who comes in. So guess that's for what it's worth. That's all I really have on it. The landscaping, I think, looks good for the most part. I think it's a really nice looking corner. You do have a monument sign. We'd probably love to have an Oak Creek sign somewhere on that corner if possible. We'd love to have that on our premier corners, and this is an entrance to the city, if that would be something you guys would want to work with the city with. I don't know, Pete, where do we have one down on that end of town? Do you even know?
I'm sorry, I was looking at my report.
Oh,
so,
no, that's okay. You're the sign guy, though. I thought you'd know. Do we have an Oak Creek sign anywhere down on that area?
I believe over by the industrial park, there's an entrance for North Branch over on Ryan.
Okay.
So that's probably the only one that we have. There might be one over by the Cousins strip mall over there, the Cousins Subs and the
yeah, there might be.
I think there's one over on that side, and I think there's one on 27th Street further south by
I guess actually
North
you're
Branch.
going west, you're kind of leaving Oak Creek. I don't know if you'd see it so much on that side of the road, so maybe it wouldn't work. But other than that, that's all I have for you guys. Question-wise, it's a pretty sharp-looking building, I think. The spandrel glass, too, the point was made. A lot of the reasons why they do that, they're probably hiding an I-beam, and if it looked in the windows, it just doesn't look right, so they blacken it with accent. That's, as he mentioned, structural. Just give you some heads up on that issue. So, other than that, I'm fine with the fence stuff. We've been through this before with other vets. I think it looks pretty good from all sides. All right. Any further discussion? All right. Which one of you daring souls is going to make a motion?
At me. All right.
Okay.
Justin moves at the Plan Commission.
Excuse me, before you make a motion, are there going to be any other additional requirements by the Plan Commission to be incorporated into the plans other than what is proposed for conditions? In other words, are you satisfied with the plans as proposed, or do you want to see anything additional for your modification considerations?
Anybody? I mean, we discussed
As long as
the
they have enough
parking.
parking.
Justin moves that the Plan Commission approves the site and building plan submitted by Dr. Jacob Otters, Lakeshore Veterinary Specialist, for the property at 9472 South 27th Street, with the following conditions. 1, that all relevant code requirements remain in effect. 2, that a copy of the signed conditions and restrictions for the conditional use permit are submitted to the Department of Community Development prior to the submission of building permit applications. 3, that the color of the spandrel window shall not be dark or mirrored glass per overlay district standards, shall be specified on the final plans. 4, that the plans are revised to include locations for all mechanical transformers and utilities. That all mechanical equipment, transformers, and utility boxes, ground, building, and rooftop are screened from view. 5, that the landscape plan is revised to include the heights of plants both at installation and maturity. Plants used to screen parking areas from rights-of-way must be installed and maintained at a minimum height of 3 feet. 6, that all revised plans, site, building, landscape, etc., are submitted in digital format for review and approval by the Department of Community Development prior to the submission of building permit applications.
But one quick question. When we say dark spandrel windows, blue is okay? Or lighter than blue?
It can't be black.
Okay.
It can't be that dark. So
Smoked.
you've seen the light colored spandrel, or the frosted look. That's what we're looking for.
Seifert seconds.
Before we vote, I guess I do have one question. I guess this would be Carrie. Sorry, I should be the last guy having a question here. I should have thought of this. What if they never get the easement out of Pick and Save and we have a building with no entrance? Then what happens?
The easement has to be allowed.
Do we have that? Do we have to say that in the conditions?
We've spoken to WSDOT about it. That's the whole reason that access point is there, is for a shared access so that there would be access to those properties, because there's nothing on 27th Street right now.
It cannot be landlocked. They will not allow it to be landlocked.
But
So
right
what's
now,
the-
you're in negotiations with Pick and Save, correct? So what if those negotiations, for lack of a better word, just stall completely?
It's a legal matter.
Does the state step in that? Or is it a private matter?
There's easement language, there's an easement agreement, maybe it wasn't recorded, but there's also case law regarding access. So it's really not necessarily anything for the Plan Commission to have to worry about right now.
Okay. Hopefully it doesn't go that far, but okay, you've answered my question. Thank you. We had a second.
Seabird will second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Anna, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Rello, aye.
Kavich, aye.
Kuzikowski, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
If by chance, guys, this doesn't work out for you, though, come on back. We'll find another place for you. It's dynamite-looking stuff. Understood, but again, we love having you in Oak Creek. We wish you luck. Your success is our success, so stay in touch with us, please. Okay, item 5C is a plan review for site building, landscape, and lighting plans submitted by Larry Bachmega for a live-work building on the property at 9079 South Fifth Avenue. Pete?
All right, we're just seeing if we have technical, there we are. There are no technical difficulties. Very good. All right, before we start into this is a site building and landscape review for the property at 9079 South Fifth Avenue. Up on the location map, if you're just to familiarize with the neighborhood in this area, this is the old Caraville neighborhood. Back in 1989, maybe a little bit earlier, this corner used to have a tavern and apartment complex on it. It was zoned commercial at the time, and back in the mid to late 80s, it closed. And then eventually the building got torn down. This was, I don't know exactly when it was torn down because this is a picture from, what do I have? I think 2000. And I know it closed beforehand due to liquor license issues, and I won't go into that much history in the site. However, when the city rezoned the whole city, that stayed as B2 commercial. When the building was taken down, we have a vacant lot that currently resides to this day. So we're about 20 years of the vacant lot that's zoned commercial, that's less than a quarter acre in size. Somewhat unique for a commercial district. I mean, most sites we're talking acres, not quarter of acres. This site is unable to be rezoned to residential. The comp plan for this area is residential. The owner of the property currently resides up in Lakeside and Fifth Avenue by my cursor here. You may be familiar, it's the Oak Creek Photography business that is there on the first floor and apartments on the second. The applicant currently resides there. He does know that this area is being redeveloped. He really likes this neighborhood, would like to be able to stay here, but he knows that his site is probably not very long for the future of the city of Oak Creek as that whole area is being redeveloped. So he has purchased this site with the hope to be able to relocate his business as a photography studio, and his wife also operates an office, professional office would do that out of this location. And so what we have proposed here tonight is a commercial building that will have residents on the second floor, commercial on the first floor. And by B2, that is allowed. Now, anytime you have commercial that abut up against residential, if you recall, it requires a 20-foot additional buffer yard into any other setbacks. Well, this lot is so narrow that if you were to have the 20-foot setback plus the 20-foot buffer that you need, or setback of the building plus the 20-foot buffer, you would have 45 feet from the west. You need 25 feet from the east, 25 east from the north, and then 25 from the south. You have like a 9-foot by 20-foot building. So basically a a mobile home trailer would be the only thing that would reside on here. And working with the applicant did go to the Board of Zoning Appeals and explain the situation, what they wanted to do. And the Board of Zoning Appeals felt that they had unique circumstances, that this was such a small site, there were no other options, and waived the requirement for that additional buffer yard. The applicant made the building fit with the minimum front, side, and rear setbacks. So that is in compliance with the zoning district. In your report, just to give you a little scale here, it's kind of unique in the fact that it is on a corner. It is a zone commercial. There is not a lot of space for parking. You know, we talked about parking a lot tonight. We'll talk about parking again here. They can put approximately 4 parking stalls on site. Based on the type of use, commercial use they're looking for, they need approximately 12 parking spaces. So a waiver to the parking requirements would be needed by this plan commission with a 3/4 approval in order to meet the on-site parking requirements. On the site plan, the applicant did show potential parking stalls on 5th Avenue and Depot Road. However, the parking stall right on the corner, parking stall number 3 and number 2, would be in conflict with the intersection there, so we wouldn't allow to have that. But even if you take away those, you would have enough parking to accommodate the businesses that are going on. Not very common here in the city to have businesses with off or on-street parking. But this is an older part of the city, something to take into consideration when taking a look at this site plan. Here is an aerial view of what the site would look like. It would be a gabled building. It would have 4-inch brick on the interior. Actually, I'll scroll down to the next rendering. Gives a better view of what is being proposed. On the first floor would be 4-inch brickwork. On the second floor would be stucco. Stucco is an acceptable exterior material for the meet the architectural design standards for this site. Another angle for this is looking on the corner, looking southwest. You can see where the parking would be. There are some additional landscaping when we'll talk about the landscaping plan, but it does meet the architectural standards on all the visual sides. There is also a 6-foot privacy fence on the west end of the property to help buffer this commercial business from the residential to the west. Now, keep in mind that the applicant did try to create a commercial building, but also have it fit in the character of the neighborhood, where if you look at the home to the south and as well to the west, it doesn't necessarily look like a commercial building. It looks more of a residential, and that was by design. A little tough to read on here, but here's the outlay. This is the first floor. There'll be offices on the north end as well as the south end of the property, with the residential entrance on the west end going up to the second story where the residential quarters would be for this. And the way the commercial works is that you can have a residential quarters for the business owner in here. And there's always that issue of what happens in the future, but as to this point, we can't base approvals on how the building is used in the future. However, it does have the residential and commercial components to the site. Lastly is the landscape plan. The applicant does require 1 tree and 5 shrubs for every 35 linear feet. That is for the exterior parking. The applicant have boxwood shrubs along the southern lot line as well as the eastern. He has submitted a new landscape plan that does show a 3-foot landscape bed around the perimeter of the building as required by code, and has added some additional trees on the north end of the property. Unfortunately, for this report, I did not able to call that up. The applicant does have, I think I jumped up all the way to the very end there. So we have the landscape plan, talked about the building, talked about the parking. So at this point, staff does recommend that the Plan Commission approves the site and building plans for a commercial building with residential quarters submitted by Larry Bachmaga for the property at 9079 South 5th Avenue, with the condition that a revised landscaping plan be submitted for staff approval prior to a building permit being issued.
Thank you, Pete. Questions from the commission? Chauncey, anything?
I do have a couple questions for the applicant. Is the applicant here? Come on up.
Hi,
Name and address, please.
my name is Larry Bachmaga. I'm living 4005 East Lakeside Avenue, Oak Creek.
Now, for this building, in our report, it says that mechanicals will be used for the business. Are they located on the outside of the building?
This building, it will be office. It's not will be big traffic. Yes, it's mostly we work in for maintenance, and will be a counter, meet people, customer. It's not will be photography business doing very good right now, and it's not too big traffic because mostly we work in the internet, do weddings, corporate events, all this stuff.
And then also, will there be a need for a dumpster?
Yes, we have. I have new plan. Is have show dumpster and extra trees, bushes, flowers.
I can answer that. He did submit a new landscape plan that I was unable to upload, but in the corner of the proposed parking space where my cursor is, he has two small trash bins. It wouldn't be like a big dumpster like you would see with like a larger business. It may be something that's smaller, not even the rollout necessarily. But the applicant is aware that they are responsible for removal of their own trash. And it did propose it in that northeast corner, which would be screened.
That is acceptable?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Brad, anything?
Oh, looks good to me. We're finally utilizing that corner.
Yeah, Chris?
Great use of the property. Good way to resurrect it. So
I
great
actually
idea.
have a question.
Yeah.
For the applicant. So are you saying that you're not going to have any noise impact at all on the
No,
neighbor
it will be
residents?
clean. Will be very clean. No big traffic. You don't see parking lot too much cars. It's maybe a month, maybe 10 cars maximum.
They do operate their business right on Lakeside in Fifth Avenue right now. They have their Oak Creek photography and professional office. You know, if you can picture where that is,
Yeah.
down on Fifth Avenue. And there have been no complaints from code enforcement for noise.
Okay, so that's the only question I have. Thank you.
And I apologize for not driving past before this meeting. So explain to me, it's just this one corner that is zoned for commercial,
Correct.
and it's all residential around it.
Yep. The comp plan shows it for that. And because the lot is so small, it can't be rezoned to RS4. It's stuck with where it is right now. And the applicant made efforts to contact abutting property owners to try to acquire more land to meet it.
They don't wanna
The
sell.
guy did not want to negotiate, so he's working with what he has. And we did try to find different alternatives for him that would make it more suitable for the site. But unfortunately, it's a real unique situation with the zoning code and the size of this property. We would more than likely not ever, allow a parcel to be zoned commercial and be this small.
Well, then with the development of the park in that area, are we short-sighted in letting a small building then take that little spot if that could be something larger in the future?
No, the neighbors don't want to sell. So if they don't want to sell now, chances are.
There is a bar on the other corner, the Victor's again.
Okay.
There is another B2 on the other side of the block where Dexter is. Right here, you see a B2 where the proposed is, and then to the south, there's a house, a vacant lot, a house, an unbuildable vacant lot, I should mention, a house, and then a commercial, and then we have multifamily. And then we do have small pockets of commercial that are in there where the restaurant, drawing a blank in the name. Yeah, Mike LaSousa's.
Again, it's a condition we have based on past use from way back when. Pretty much.
But with the limited parking, and just to, to put this building there, like, I don't know, we're kind of just, and that could be.
There's no guarantee that the neighbors to that would be the south, Pete?
Yeah, the neighbor to the south owns that narrow strip of land, which is an unbuildable lot as well. There's a lot of mashed up parcels and zonings in this neighborhood based on the old use with industrial, with residential, commercial. I mean, you have a multifamily zone district that doesn't meet the minimum requirements. That's also there. I mean, there is a hodgepodge of zoning in this section.
This was our oldest part of town.
So I mean, if their concern is that we should wait for something bigger, it's not as if there would be a lot of real estate collection that you'd have to amass a lot of properties, which would require you to knock down buildings anyway. So to be concerned about this small parcel, this is going to be one of many parcels that would have to be put together from a real estate perspective in order to make anything bigger anyway. So I don't know if that waylays any concern about allowing something to be built now. If anything is going to be taken down later for a bigger project, if that were to happen. There are residents next door. There's businesses next door. You can have something now, or do you wait and just wait?
There's a storm sewer on the northwest corner of this property. When we get into the grading plans and how that works, we'll have to work with you on making sure that still functions. Might need some curb and gutter along Depot Road, just to make that all flow and work to that catch basin. But we need actual engineering drawings before we can start working on that.
Anything else? I was just kind of going down the line. Dawn, you're still pondering this? I am. I'll give you a couple minutes. For what it's worth, I think it's a unique use of the property, given the restrictions we got. I favor putting it in. Given what it is, and assembling properties to get one larger parcel is dependent on a lot of homeowners being willing to relocate or what have you. We've experienced it in other parts of the city where it just doesn't happen or doesn't work for various reasons. I think it fits in the neighborhood pretty well, actually, all things considered. And it's a low-impact business. So the parking, again, a little different than we're accustomed to because we usually work with a blank canvas and a little larger lot, definitely. But if you think about businesses that exist in other communities like Bayview, things of that nature with storefronts, Mitchell Street, they operate on this kind of stuff all the time with parking. They thrive and survive. So
downtown has it right out the door. Street parking.
Yeah, we do. You're right. So I mean, businesses are coping with it that way too. Although there's a lot of alternative options, but again, I think it's pretty creative myself. So I'm okay with it. This neighborhood's gonna have a different vibe to it and a different feel to it as it reestablishes itself with the park and anything else that may come in the future. So I'm okay with it. So
one more question. How many, is it one residential above, or is that more than one?
It's one residential upstairs. I will live with my wife, yes.
Okay, so there would be cars just for the residential as well as for the customers?
Yeah, we will working downstairs.
Okay.
And it will be, maybe one person will be help us work.
And no garage?
There is no garage proposed, no.
Right. Okay.
No, it's all at-grade parking outside, and then the off-site parking is what's being proposed.
Okay. Anything else from the commission? Motion, please.
Okay. Anna had the Plan Commission approve the site and building plans for a commercial building with residential quarters submitted by Larry Bachmaga for the property at 9079 South Fifth Avenue, with the condition that a revised landscaping plan be submitted for staff approval prior to a building permit being issued.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call.
Hannah, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Grillo, no.
Gavich, aye.
Guzikowski, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Okay.
Thank you so
Good
much.
luck.
Thank you. It will be
We're all
nice looking building. I tell you, when I did full restoration of this building where studio now, it's all neighbor will start fixing something. Before nobody did nothing. And was crime too much, everything, now better tenants go around, everything, this area go much better.
Yep, you're going to be in the hipster part of
Yeah,
town.
now
You're going to have
we'll
it
do
made.
this building and it will be, street will be looking better. Thank you so much.
It'll be great. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Before we adjourn, I just want to thank everybody that came out to our plant sale here this weekend. Generated a lot of funds for the library. Thank you to T-Hands for supplying all the product. Our next couple events we have coming up is our first of the season city-run beer garden at Abendschein, and that is, what is it, May 28th through the 1st?
Second.
First weekend in tail end of May. Hang on, Pete's getting the official calendar out.
Yeah. May 31st through June 3rd.
May 31st through June 3rd at Abendschein Park. Always a good time. Get out there, mix and mingle with your neighbors. And then also that very same weekend, our farmers market makes its debut here at Drexel Town Square that first Saturday in June, which would be the 1st, correct? 2nd. So I am off of my calendars, but June 2nd, starting time? 9 a.m. So we're hoping to have great weather that weekend and kick off both events with a bang. So please get out there, discover, and celebrate Oak Creek. And now we need adjournment.
Grillo moves to adjourn at 7:27.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call.
Anna, here.
Johnston, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Gavich, aye.
Guzikowski, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
I know.
Thank you. Have a good rest of the week.
No, I'm not. I'm getting